So today we're going to be looking at the cognitive approach to explaining depression, and we're going to be looking at what depression is. So we're going to look at describing the emotional, cognitive and behavioural characteristics of depression, and then later on we're going to look in another video at the ABC model and Beck's cognitive theory. So the first things first is that you need to know what depression is, and it's a mood disorder characterised by low mood and low energy. And what we mean by this isn't just when we have an odd day and we feel down. It's about a persistent low mood, not being able to get up, not being able to go to work or to school, not being able to feel any joy out of anything that you usually would. And that's really important. We often say the phrase or overuse the phrase, I'm feeling depressed. But really, people with depression are feeling persistently low and low levels of energy. There are many different types. You don't need to know these in much detail, if at all, but they're just interesting to know that there are different types. Major depressive disorder is a severe but often short term, and it might be triggered by something in particular, like end of year exams. Persistent depressive disorder is similar to this, but it's a lot longer, and it's often reoccurring, so periods of feeling very low and then periods of feeling okay again, but then going back to feeling very low. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is similar or can be likened to having childhood temper tantrums. It's often found in children who just really have not learned yet to regulate their mood, so they don't know how to cope with situations, so can often feel very low. And finally, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and this is when we have disruption to mood prior to and during menstruation. So we're going to look at the different characteristics, and the first one is behavioural. Remember, this is the actions that are shown. So the first behaviour, which is shown by depression, is a shift in activity levels. And this can be characterised by both an increase and a decrease in it. So some people might be really restless, they can't stop, but they need to be involved in everything and being engaged in something all the time. Or the opposite, where you feel very tired and you want to sleep all the time. And this doesn't necessarily mean you get good sleep, but you just feel like you're very tired, you can't get up, you can't go anywhere because your brain is just so exhausted. And that affects your sleep. So again, some people get a lot more sleep. They sleep a lot of the time. They find it really difficult to get up in the mornings. And this isn't just from feeling tired about getting up in the mornings. This is from just genuinely not feeling like they can get up. There's no point in getting up, and there's very little to motivate you. They know that they should get up, but it's really difficult to get these people out of bed. Everything for them is a struggle. Just sitting up in bed, like putting your slippers and your dressing gown on, this is all real effort to these people. And that's not their fault, it's just simply part of the disorder. It's really difficult to motivate yourself when you're feeling so low. Other people often experience insomnia, and again, these people might find it really difficult to get out of bed because they haven't slept and they're exhausted, but equally they can't find the motivation to get out of bed. And finally, appetite. Again, some people this increases and some people it decreases. Some people comfort eat to make them feel better, and some people will struggle to eat at all, especially if they have to cook and prepare the meals themselves. They're always exhausted and very tired. They've had a lack of sleep or poor quality sleep, and this has led to them not being motivated to eat at all. You can note, therefore, that already it's going to be really difficult to diagnose someone accurately with depression because each of these can be characterised in lots of different ways. You could have someone who sleeps a lot and eats loads and is really restless, but equally you could have someone that's really tired, they can't sleep, they're having insomnia and they don't eat enough. So it's very difficult just from these categories alone to actually diagnose someone accurately with depression. Second, we've got our emotions, which are our feelings. The main one, and that you have to have, is a feeling of sadness. This can be low mood or a feeling of emptiness, like there's nothing there, there's just a void. They feel often hopeless, like there's no point continuing, there's nothing to look forward to. and it's just a real lack of self-esteem, not thinking that you're good enough or worthy enough to be here. And then a loss of interest. You often don't stop doing things that you're interested in usually that bring you joy, and you feel that you have a lack of control, like things are moving away at a different pace to how you're moving. There's an interesting study which shows that people who have depression actually walk slower than everybody else. So you can see that things will feel like people are going at a different pace to you if you actually are going at a different pace to them. And finally, anger. Sometimes this is anger at yourself, but it also can be taken out on others. It often arises from being hurt and wanting to retaliate, but it could also just be the frustration in that you know that normally you can get out of bed and normally you can go to school or work, but for some reason this last few months you just can't do what you usually do, and that's frustrating. So you can see why people would feel angry. The third is cognitive, so your thoughts. They have very specific thoughts. They have a negative view of the world. They believe that everything will turn out badly and there's no hope. For example, you might believe that climate change is going to ruin, like, unless we have like a climate change, our climate is going to be wrecked, which obviously is true, but people with depression really take this on board and believe it's their responsibility to make a change. They might believe that, for example, Boris Johnson is ruining the country and the whole world is going to fall to pieces with him in charge. And this may or may not be true, but they take it upon themselves again to feel responsible for that, or feel responsibility for changing that outcome when they can't. So they often have views where they believe that they want to change something that probably to a person who isn't suffering from depression just seems irrational. They also have a negative expectation of themselves, so linking to that, they have an expectation about how their lives or relationships should be. For example, they believe that they'll never find true love. And it can be very negative and damaging to them because it often leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what we mean by self-fulfilling prophecy is that if you believe that you'll never find true love, then you won't look for true love, so therefore you won't find it, and you'll believe that you'll never find true love. So it's like an endless cycle. You fulfill the prophecy that you have set for yourself. And then finally, irrational thoughts, which links to both these. All of these thoughts are irrational. They don't understand or can't recognise that these are beyond some things are beyond their control, or that they're seeing things that aren't accurate reflections of reality. And it's worth noting that this can really seem like, when we're discussing it, that these people are mad. Like, why can't they realise that their thoughts are irrational? But to them, they've spent a long time thinking these thoughts and convincing themselves that this is the way it is. So it's very hard, you can imagine, to undo those thoughts. But that is the whole point of CBT, which we're going to learn about, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, where we do try and change those irrational thoughts into more rational thoughts. So you might just want to pause the video and have a think about the characteristics of depression and whether you can identify these from the pictures below. So, for example, the person at the computer, you could say, is the activity, is about activity levels. You could say that the sad face is about feeling sadness. The guy lying down is about sleep and their effectiveness of sleep. The woman by the food is appetite. The irrational thoughts might be the brain. You could also say the irrational thoughts of the person next to them, where I'm not good enough, nobody loves me. That specific irrational thought is the irrational thought about yourself. The two people at the top, that it might be showing anger, or you could argue that it's also showing like relationships and not being able to effectively have a relationship. And the boy at school could be about poor concentration as well. So we also find that people can't focus. Hopefully that was helpful. Remember to think about, when you're discussing depression, not your idealism of what you think depression is, but these specific characteristics of depression. That will really help your answer.